The first season of DanDaDan really surprised me with its energy and ability to be an actually fun watch. That being said, there are elements within those episodes I definitely wish weren't there and would definitely prefer there be none of going forward, but I mean, when a show sets its pace, it's hard to imagine it's going to switch up its style this early in. The parts of the show that I really like, and if the balance skews even more to that stuff than the people in their underwear stuff, we could have a show that I'm potentially really into. God, come on, just be cool, just be cool. It nailed it. There were multiple points in this season where I was watching this show and I was actively thinking, wow, I am really enjoying this. I didn't expect this out of this show at all. I think it really fucking crushed it. There's still parts with stuff I don't like, but there's far less of it, and it feels like it's moving further and further away from that stuff and really doubling down on the stuff I like and adding more of that to it. This is the most fun I've had watching an anime for my channel. This is going to be a video filled with mostly praise, I imagine, but I wouldn't feel right if I didn't talk about the stuff that bothers me as well. Maybe it doesn't work for the format of the video that I will be mostly positive in, but I want to get the biggest, most awkward diatribe out of the way first. Then we can move on to how much I liked it. Cool? Okay, let's do it. Yes, there are still scenes of young people being in really not cool situations. The scene to open the entire season is the most dubious of them all. Because in the others, the scenes are played around the fact that the aliens are unfamiliar with human anatomy and naturally don't follow our sexual logic, so it isn't sexual for them. But this one is definitely sexually charged, and the vibe is really off. The vibe to the characters being off is the point, but the vibe is off to me as well. Like, I don't want to see this shit. Of course, the scene plays out with Momo beating them up and a building falling on them, and Momo pulls a Buster Keaton. So, I mean, it's good to see that these creepy old cultists get beat up, but it still really feels kind of exploitative to me. I got some comments on my last video on this topic that brought up points that the show is speaking on topics of actual abuse that women experience. Both this weird cultist family and the aliens have the look of average working people, classic depictions of Japanese businessmen, and the show is depicting them preying on women. Okay, sure, but I don't feel like that's really strong social commentary. I feel like there has to be a balance to what's shown on screen visually and the strength of the message coming across through the media to justify that imagery, and there really isn't any of that. It's just a girl being preyed on by creepy old men. There's no real commentary to that. It's just some really horrible shit that actually happens. It doesn't speak to the actual experiences of women who go through this. It doesn't try to send a message about how men in positions of power shouldn't hold that power in all aspects of their lives. It really is just very face value, and that face value is not very much. To me, at least, any wider meaning to these scenes are drowned out by the fact that this is an anime that very much isn't about this stuff most of the time, and those moments feel more like weird fan service than anything with a greater message in mind. I don't like these scenes, and I wish they weren't here. There were other comments that brought up another take that holds maybe slightly more water for me, but I still don't think the show accomplishes what these people have in mind either. They say that people being in their underwear, or being in a state of undress, mostly in that the school is flooded episode, is a metaphor for being honest with each other, being plain to the outside world in your feelings and opinions. Now, while I think that does work as a metaphor on paper, and I think it may actually be effective too, it doesn't work in this show, man. It can't. The lead is buried far too deeply. Yeah, those scenes do revolve around some breaking down of walls and coming out the other side of a misunderstanding, sure, but once again, I feel like the visuals have to match what you're going for. This show has already had scenes with people in their underwear and messed up situations that it's played as mostly high-paced, crazy, zany scenes. The author knows probably better than the rest of us that this kind of thing sells, so even if they are trying to portray a grander message with it, it's betrayed by the fact that at the end of the day, it's still a bunch of high schoolers running around in their fucking underwear. It's like, yeah, okay, cool, artsy metaphor or whatever, if that even is what you're going for, but at the same time, you know what you're doing. The energy of that message, if it exists, that's trying to come across doesn't match what we're actually watching. I don't think it works. Really, these elements are my biggest issue with this show by a lot. It kind of pisses me off that I've had to dedicate an extended paragraph to this in both scripts, but I have to bring it up because it's a real problem I have with the show. Thankfully, that kind of stuff really doesn't come back at all outside of the first episode of this season. It's dropped entirely, which is awesome. Great work. I hope I don't have to talk about this awkward shit anymore in the future. Okay, with that out of the way, and keep in mind this next statement is speaking only on the elements of this piece of media outside of those which I just discussed, this show kind of fucking rules. Like, what is this? It's actually funny now. Unlike the previous season where a lot of the humor is based off of really immature stuff, now the show actually has really funny stuff in it. Like setup and payoff off. Quick, tiny visual jokes, things that people above the age of 13 will crack a smile at. I guess we're making that a point first. Anime humor doesn't usually do it for me because often it's always the same joke of someone freaking out or someone doing something to make other people freak out. It's all very tiresome and boring. But DanDaDan actually tells jokes, and it uses the medium to its advantage rather than leaning on it as a crutch. I've had this problem for my entire YouTube career. When you find a joke funny, you can't say much more than you find it funny. What are you supposed to do? Explain it? That doesn't help. Try to be funny over top of it? That doesn't work either. So how do you analyze a show being funny? You just say it's funny, I guess. I guess I'll try and do it anyway. Just the energy of Okaroon saying, you know what, I'll just play it.
Just going to get tea!
Getting tea sounds like a date!
If Momo took Gigi out for tea, would that be a date?
It would not. And it's no.
That's funny. Or like when it plays the exact same animation of the UFO blasting into space, this big, long, over-the-top time commitment. The same animation from last season, only for them to come right back and the characters to be like, yeah, it was only just down the road. They probably could have just walked. That's a joke. It's an actual joke. There being actual jokes in anime that aren't just anime cliches is such a foreign concept to me. It was enlightening. There's this weird-looking alien that's animated completely differently that obviously hates them but speaks in an alien language, but Peeny Weenie keeps telling them that the alien is extremely grateful to be there and to be working with them. There's a tiny visual gag that I like where it looks like after the big kaiju battle, the house looks like it's gonna slot back together perfectly by these two shots, but then it pulls back to show it's a complete mess. I realize now I'm literally just listing jokes from the show, and that doesn't make for a very good YouTube video, but it just constantly blew me away that there was a show from Japan, animated mind you, aimed at a young audience that could actually find a way to be funny and tell actual jokes through both the dialogue and the visuals. I was completely floored. And even the jokes that do end on the anime screaming tend to be an actual joke beforehand, like the time where they make the giant mech and it ends with Okaroon accidentally ejecting and going flying. Like, that's a joke first. Yeah, he goes flying and screams at the end, but the joke is that they're all suddenly in this giant robot and no one knows how to work the fucking thing because no one's done it before. That's a joke. So refreshing. A little side note here before we move on, more character building on my end. I messed it up again. I don't know how. Yeah, it's Okaroon, not Okarun. But now my character arc has led me to realize that my mouth or accent or whatever really wants my brain to say Okarun for some reason. So maybe I have a little more goodwill and an understanding towards reviewers who mispronounce names in shows than I realize, because I'm guilty of it too. Regardless, I will be the change I want to see in the world and pronounce it properly now. Okaroon and Momo's relationship seems to be slowly growing as the show moves forward. Of course, like I mentioned last video, I know the slow burn element of romances is really what keeps people coming back, the small little interactions that grow more and more, and it's fun to see what the next little thing will be, or how each character will react to the next romantic situation. I asked last time if you would call this a romance since I'm so inexperienced in watching this stuff. I wasn't really sure if that was something that was done. I know that shonen anime can have characters that have love interests, but a character having a love interest and a show being a romance are certainly two different things. Now I realize that this show certainly has to be seen as a romance. There's just too much time dedicated to the feelings of these two characters to not categorize it as such. It's definitely a lot of other things too, but yes, a romance for sure. And hey, maybe I'm a romance guy because I'm really enjoying it. I don't take in any romance media of any kind ever, so maybe that's why this all feels so fresh to me. Like I said, I know tropes and stuff and situations that have been written a million times before, and those do show up in this show. But I don't know, just like a lot of this show, it just feels fun. I really like the angle that Momo and Okaroon both like each other and are both too shy or embarrassed to admit it, but it's Momo that's the one that has the moments of being more forward about it. It makes sense based on their characters. Momo is the far more confident of the two. Okaroon is starting to really shape up on having a spine in a lot of situations, but when it comes to Momo, he still very often seems at a loss, which I like a lot. There's this one quick scene I actually loved. They're sitting in the car and their fingers accidentally touch. Okaroon recoils and Momo tells him that it's no big deal and to put his hand back. Momo reaches her pinky out to touch Ken's again, and as the car enters a tunnel, she slowly begins to actually try and hold his hand. And when Okaroon freezes up, she starts playing with his hand openly. This is the most blatant affection she's ever shown him, despite playing it up with her words that she has no idea what Okaroon is talking about when he asks what she's doing. This wouldn't really be much more than a cute scene without the tunnel. I think the tunnel is genius. When they enter the tunnel, suddenly Momo feels more comfortable with being open about her feelings, being more vulnerable with Okaroon. The rest of the world can't see them. It's just them, in a sense. They're just there together, and Momo can express a bit of her feelings to him. Momo's tentativeness in actually pursuing Okaroon Okarun, I imagine, comes from the fact that he was a friendless, socially inept nerd, and is still, to an extent, socially inept, and is still very much a nerd. And Momo is a popular girl in high school. The optics of her going after a guy like Okarun in the high school sphere would not be very good. The social standings just don't line up. So when they enter the tunnel, the rest of the world can't see, and Momo can finally let down some of the defenses she's built up because of their two different social statuses. There's this other moment that I like where Momo shrugs and tells Okarun that he's cool now, and Okarun is stunned for a second and then says that he did it. He became cool. And Momo loves that because that was just such a him response. Momo likes Okarun for precisely who he is, despite their two differing high school experiences. It's clear too that this is very much an internal battle for Momo as well, because her two best friends seem to openly support her being with Okarun, happily, with no sarcasm or bite to their words. They just seem supportive. Whenever they say she's dating Okarun openly with people in the room, she doesn't even dispute it. You'd expect like a big anime reaction to that, like, I'm not dating Okarun, blah blah, you know? But no, she doesn't say anything. What the rest of the student body would think, who knows? But it seems like everyone that matters to Momo in that sense is giving her the green light, but her own views of herself and the impact it would have on her seem to hold her back. This short, lovely little scene ends when they come out of the tunnel and they're interrupted by Gigi turning around and shouting something at them. The rest of the world comes back into plain view, and those defenses Momo has are suddenly back up. And it's no coincidence that it's Gigi that interrupts Okarun's first real showing of love from Momo. Gigi is definitely Okarun's biggest obstacle in that pursuit from his perspective, so of course it's him that breaks it up. It's a scene that lasts under a minute probably, but it's really effective in saying a lot without saying anything. I thought it was great. One of my favorite moments from the show. Another one of my favorite moments is when the band shows up. Now you have to take into account that this show is about an enormous nerd loser in high school that loves thinking about aliens and Bigfoot and ghosts and stuff, and then this band shows up, and I'm thinking, haha, this show is already so tailored to me, and especially a high school version of me. Wouldn't it be funny if this band turned out to be a power metal band? And then those first few notes rung out, and my eyes squinted in suspicion, like surely there's no way. And then the song really kicks into it, and I literally looked over my shoulder in my apartment. I had the thought, like, what is this? Am I being punked? Why does this show have everything I like in it? You may have clocked this from me putting the Epic Maneuver, Nightwish, Ghost Love Score meme in some of my videos, but I also sneak in other semi-obscure metal songs into my videos here and there too. There's Nightwish, of course, but there's also some Blind Guardian, Judas Priest, did a Through the Fire and the Flames joke once, Amon Amarth. I sneaked them in. When I listened to this for the first time, I was stunned. I was like, what the fuck? This kind of music doesn't find its way into popular media very often. Where did this come from? And because I treated myself to the dub, which I have to say has been of consistent, seemingly extreme quality, I listened to the dumbass power metal lyrics in first person, these burning sunlight, everlasting ass lyrics that are so genuine to the actual style of music, it's genius. While listening to it for the first time, I genuinely thought it was Kai Hansen from Halloween and Gamma Ray. It sounds a lot like him, so I looked it up, and it's actually the vocalist from Dragon Force, the Through the Fire and the Flames guys. To be fair, I think they have a different vocalist now from the Through the Fire and the Flames days, but he's from Dragon Force, and I'm just sitting there like, what the hell? This show is built for me. This is like a love letter to my high school self. If this show came out when I was 16, I would have been obsessed with this shit. Holy, it's got it all, man. Like, what the hell is going on? And once again, the visuals are even funny. Seiko headbanging for a split second, genius. And Seiko has the same name as one of my favorite brands of watches. It's like they drilled into my brain. I try to keep a level head when it comes to enjoying stuff and not enjoying stuff, you know me, but somewhere deep in the ape synapses of my brain, some concoction of nostalgia and appreciation makes me smile every time I think about this silly ass scene. And I'm sure it doesn't hit nearly as hard for almost anyone else, but hey, you're watching my video, so I get to choose what gets praised for 2 minutes straight, and I get to bring up the bands that 99.9% of people have never heard of to subtly show that I'm not a poser to the few people that do get it. See here, like, watch this, Angra. How does this kind of thing get across in the manga, though, I wonder, you know? How do you do a crazy metal performance on a page? I don't know about you guys, but my favorite sense to experience a song with is my hearing, so I don't know how effective that could have been reading it. Also, a small thought I had, this band doesn't actually have any spiritual connection, right? They just rock so fucking hard they can wake the dead from their graves. So from their perspective here, there's no crazy spirit audience going nuts. They just set their lights and lasers and pyrotechnics up to go utterly fucking ballistic and play as hard as they ever could for 3 kids standing in someone's front yard and a lady who's barely paying attention. That's a pretty funny thought. Can we talk about how good the action is too? How it's actually action and actually fun to watch? Here, I've been dying to make this joke. Look at this. Turbo Granny was right. He is faster than me, but my training at the school to learn my battle rhythm has really paid off. I feel both faster and stronger. I just need to keep dodging his energy balls and find an opening, and then I can go all out. For my plan to work, I need this to go just right. I owe it to Miss Ayase for everything that she's done for me. I need to be able to stand up for my friends. I won't let them down.
This foolish child, though his speed is impressive, he hasn't gone through the pain that I have that has tempered me into this powerful form. With this mortal container I now inhabit, there's nothing any of these pitiful humans can do to withstand my power. This is all just an act of futile theater. They will be the first victims of my slaughter of their entire beauty species.
So refreshing in the face of the other stuff that I've watched recently. I would prefer a well-animated, well-executed fight scene that lasts 90 seconds over one that lasts an episode that doesn't ever even feel like a fight. I'd make that trade every day of the week. A lot of the fights in animation won't blow your dick hair off or anything, but there are still consistently a couple of really creative shots and poses and cool moments whenever an action scene pops up, and honestly, that's all I ever really asked for. For a scene to be fun and cool and respect my time, and DanDaDan does that consistently. There's even like choreography that conveys how fights are going naturally. In Evil Eye vs. Okaroon Round 1, Okaroon lands a hit and they feel muted and weak, and Evil Eye barely even budges. Meanwhile, every time Okaroon gets hit, it feels like he's getting hit by a fucking car. And the show doesn't slow down to tell you this out loud, it just lets you watch it and assumes you can interact with reality with your human senses. It's incredible. I feel sort of bad for not liking the composer fight scene as much as the others, because it's obviously a really cool idea for a scene, but I don't know, it just didn't really hit the way I think the show wanted it to for me. I imagine some classic music enthusiasts watched this and had a similar feeling to what I did when the metal band came out, and I'm sure that was a ton of fun for them. It was creative and weird like a lot of the show often is, and I like the idea of Okaroon's training not being just a training montage, but learning through experience, and that scene also had a lot of stuff I like in the action scenes I just listed, the quickness and coolness. So on paper, I should have liked that scene just as much as any other, but I don't know, I just didn't have as much fun with it. Oh, I also really like the idea that Momo and Okaroon are the most powerful together. You know, it's kind of a cute little play on the romance stuff too. Momo basically has remote super strength with her psychic arms, but her mobility is lacking. Okaroon is super fast and strong in his own right, but I don't think he could pick up a fire truck with ease. So when Okaroon is piggybacking Momo and they're together, they've got the best of both worlds. They're strong together. I like it. Opening time, it's opening time. Well, DanDaDan hits the extremely rare 2 for 2 in openings being great. It's a lot different than opening 1, and I probably still like opening 1 a bit more, but it is a pretty tight race, really. I mean, I like the song probably overall even more, but man, that part of opening 1 where they actually start singing, that's hard to beat, man. It's a tough call. This opening, of course, plays with color a lot. When Okaroon is alone, the world is gray and boring. He feels disconnected from people, but as he runs, there are colors bleeding in all around him before he and his friends are shown quickly in shots of harsh color and, well, emoting harshly. Okaroon for so long felt alone and disconnected from people, but his new relationships are coloring his life in new ways. This is strengthened by these really nice shots from his POV of moments we've already seen and will see in this arc of him looking at Momo, including that really nice moment in the tunnel that they share. The world around his glasses is gray, but when he looks at Momo, the world seems alive and filled with color, and if that's just not the cutest idea ever, then I don't know what is. There are quick shots of just pure style, which the show loves to do, and I love to look at, where the characters move to the song, and then there's shots of Momo's being bathed in extreme colors before she sees Okaroon still in black and white. When they reach out for each other, Okaroon's world finally comes into color. The world is right when they're together. Really nice. I like the idea behind this opening a lot. You know, as I type this out, I might like this opening better, honestly, because I can really glean a lot from it from just the colors. Opening 1, it really feels like a lot of it goes over my head. I just don't have the knowledge to interact with it on a deeper level, but in this one, there's a lot that's easier to feel about, I guess. It's also a really nice choice to have Okaroon and Momo's colors be the contrasting and complementary red and green combo. It really captures how different they are, but how they still work well together. And I even like how the colors have different feels. Momo's powers are like this very cool, almost blue-green, while Okaroon's are a deep crimson red, like you can't get any more red. I think that really helps the contrast as well. There's also this really cool element I noticed, and I gotta be honest, I just got lucky in finding it since I paused on a favorable frame once. As they speed through the tunnel to end the opening, there are flashes of colors as they move along the wall. If you look at them closely, you can actually see that they're all the enemies from these episodes. You can see the Mongolian Deathworm here, and then you can see Evil Eyes smiling at them in purple, and then they run past the composers, and finally the kaiju is on the wall to end it out. Wow, a really nice touch. Yeah, just a really A1 opening. Cannot complain. Watch it to start every episode every time, gladly. Alright, let's level this endless praise out with a bit of criticism. criticism, yeah. I don't know if you can even call what I'm about to say criticism if you know their points that they're specifically just don't hit for me. Like, the show was still good during all of this I'm about to bring up, but for me specifically, it just wasn't as fun. Maybe I'll know at the end of the point. Okay, so Quinta gets introduced in the closing 3 episodes, and I'm not sure how I feel about him yet. Gigi had a similar introduction last season where he came in at the end, and he actually won me over before those episodes closed out, which I was surprised by. So I thought, hey, this show probably has the power to do it again. But this time, yeah, I'm less convinced. Quinta thankfully never breaks into the realm of annoying, which I feel like this archetype for a character could easily do, but I just don't find he's as easy to like as the other characters so far. I've only seen 3 episodes with him, so who knows for the future. He shares a lot of features with Okaroon. He's a loser and doesn't know how to talk to girls and is looked down on by most of his peers for his interests. He should slot into the superpowered losers club pretty smoothly, and I think he does, but I just don't know. There's something about him that hasn't quite clicked for me yet. I honestly love his message of unabashedly loving the things you love, screw what anyone else thinks. This channel was started with a very similar mindset, and that moment did do a really good job of endearing me to him more. But here's where the point of, I don't know if this is criticism or not, comes in. So this 3-episode snafu that they find themselves in, they're fighting a kaiju to reclaim what I hope is Okaroon's final testicle. If not, then well, I wasn't expecting that at all. And you know, I'm way into kaiju stuff. I love it. The more I type about DanDaDan, the more I realize my interests will force me to be the end of my genetic line, but hey, Godzilla rules. What can you do? Like, I'm so into kaiju, I know what Super Special Space Godzilla High Grade Type 2 is, and I even tried to watch the show he's in to get up to seeing him, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't hang. It's not a very good show. The episodes are under 3 minutes long, and I still couldn't do it. Anyway, yeah, big kaiju guy, way into it. Now, mechs and mecha are a different story. That stuff never really hit for me. When a giant robot is fighting a giant monster, then maybe we can parlay, but giant robots usually aren't for me. And it's weird, because that's what a lot of this is, but I just found that in these closing 3 episodes that the show may have lost some of the energy that is its greatest strength. Not a lot of it maybe, but it just felt a little less colorful than it had been, a bit slower with having to react to all the stuff the kaiju was doing and trying to figure out how to beat it. Which is weird, because I actually love the scrambling nature of the problem solving in this show, and I'm going to talk about that more in a minute, but somewhere in the guts of these last 3 episodes, I started to have a little bit less fun. I think it was probably a combination of Quinta not really grabbing me as a character right away and him getting a lot of screen time, and then the nerdy love that this show loves to hand out to its topics being handed out to an interest that I'm not all that interested in. So what I mean is, can you even really call this point criticism? The whole point is that I had like slightly less fun with it, maybe 15% less fun than I've had with the other 9 episodes this season, and mostly for reasons I think that are internal to me. If it is criticism, it's not very strong. Honestly, it's probably yet another compliment to the show when it misses with its content a little bit from me and it can still be this enjoyable. What is probably the biggest part of these episodes, the evil eye stuff, has gone basically unmentioned so far, so let's get into that. I didn't love the feeling of the town to start out last season, really. This really drab, uncolorful place. Kind of felt like the show had the flu or something. So I really wasn't expecting for all this stuff to kick off. First off, shout out to the cryptid culture with the Mongolian deathworm shout out. I like that the show uses folklore for its monsters, but then also puts its own spin on it, and those spins are explained by Okaroon just being excited about the differences. Deathworms are supposed to be big, like a few feet maybe, but not like this, and Okaroon says the same thing, which lets me know that, alright, they know game, carry on. I also knew that the worm would have electric powers episodes in advance because I know about Mongolian deathworms. No, please don't click off the video. I swear I'm cool. Like, I like sports and stuff too, for example. Like, who the hell on the Sportsnet broadcast for Game 7 thought it was a good idea to play Mr. Brightside going into the bottom of the 7th or the 8th or whatever the hell it was? And specifically the line about choking? Like, are you kidding me? This is baseball. At least like 20% of the culture is about superstition. I think it's pretty cool how the show will go from crazy, zany, fun times and doing wacky shit and then just randomly hit you with, whoops, cooked child. You're just sitting there like, oh, damn. The evil eye backstory is really tragic and all, and the idea of being trapped in a location and watching everyone around you kill themselves for hundreds of years is horrifying, but I don't think the emotions ever got up to around the point of the lady in the red dress story for me. It just never hit me that hard. Also, stay with me here. I'm a little confused at how the evil eye works in like a personality sense. So he attaches to Gigi, and Gigi seems instantly convinced that he's a chill spirit, despite him clearly not being a chill spirit. But the spirit as a kid was obviously not evil. He was horribly starved and sacrificed for some some bullshit, and then even as a spirit to start out, he seemed good-natured and wanted to help. So here's where my confusion lies. Despite being good-natured with other children to start, the presence of the worm underground started affecting the older people in the homes that were built on top of it, and they started ending themselves because of it. And then over time, being around all this pain and suffering, it warped into something that was actually malevolent and wanted to harm people. I'm cool with that, sure, but Gigi seems really convinced that it's actually a really good spirit. It's just a kid after all. And I thought it would actually be really cool and chilling if the spirit did actually just trick Gigi and fool him into thinking it wasn't evil. That would be a cool play, but it doesn't feel like it's going that way. If it was an actually really sad backstory, but the reality of the situation is that this thing is just twisted now and it is evil. But that doesn't really feel like it would fit this show either, so. But then on top of all of this, when Gigi is possessed, Evil Eye does want to kill all of humanity, fervently, with vigor. He is pretty certain about it, but then it seems like this childlike entity's views on what fun is have been twisted by his own power and horrible experiences and just darkness, that it seems to him like killing everyone would be a great time. So you can see how there's a bit of whiplash looking back and forth on this thing and trying to figure out its actual vibe. And I mean, maybe that's the point. The spirit is purposely childlike, so getting a read on him probably would be hard. And he actually brings in a lot of solid comedy to the show too. Sure, he might fall into those characters that are just one joke a little bit, but it's a joke that can be told in a lot of different ways. This hyper murderous ghost barely keeping it all under the surface and having to fit in with modern society sometimes. There could be an entire show just about that, honestly. Another tangent though, can people not see when he changes into Evil Eye? Because I don't know, man, I might catch on to a guy looking like this. The public not being able to see spiritual stuff is established, so that makes perfect sense. I just didn't know how it would work when it was tied to Gigi. Actually, no, now that I think about it, Kenta clocks it immediately when he transforms, and I don't think he's spiritually attuned at all, right? So I'm not really sure how maybe any of this works. Ah, well, the Evil Eye storyline where it's all set in that town, that giant mess where it goes completely haywire, really impressed me. This show is really good at doing this thing where you never know what's going to happen next, and I think that's something that could eventually get tiring, but for right now, I think it just kind of kicks ass. So let's run down the events after things get kicked off. So the Death Worm is here, and it's got a hold of both Momo and Okarun mentally, so your first thought is, oh nice, this will be an episode where Gigi proves he's worthy to be on the team and be a hero, and then they'll all team up to dramatically beat the Death Worm, right? That is a completely reasonable thought and expectation to where this story will go. What actually happens is that the Evil Eye shows up, and he was the one haunting Gigi all along, and he possesses Gigi. Okarun and Evil Eye have to fight now, and Okarun gets his ass beat. He's able to get Momo out of the cavern below the house, and Momo decides to burn Gigi's house down to get help here as fast as possible and force the worm above ground because of the water from the fire hoses. She throws a fire truck at Gigi's house to completely destroy it so the worm will dry out from the sun and die. Okay, great. One problem down. Actually, no, psych. It turns out the myth of the worm keeping the volcano at bay was true, and now the volcano is exploding. Fuck, okay. Let's use the worm's corpse as a giant fire hose to try and quell some of the lava coming towards the town. No, wait, the weird-ass gray people are back because they didn't die inside the worm. The worm ate them earlier, don't worry about it. So now we have to fight this lady too while all of this is happening. But then the dude from the shrine comes back to help. Nice, alright. Turns out he's Seiko's apprentice. Didn't know that. Okay, cool. Now we can probably handle... No, wait, Evil Eye's up here now too, and he wants to kill everything on two legs within like a 4,000-mile radius. Oh, man, now on... Oh, hold on, Mr. Mantis pulled up. Now we got him. But Evil Eye is still too tough. But then wait, no, son of Mr. Mantis is here as well, and they brought Seiko, and through the UFO, they can actually use the weird worm hose more effectively to slow down the lava. And they also brought the weird science lab anatomical dummy guy, and they force Evil Eye to be surrounded by his entire body plus one evil subduing talisman. And then boom, day's over, everyone pack up. Pretty boring day overall, you know. Oh, and afterwards, it actually turns out that the weird gray lady was an alien the whole time, and making the worm that big was some vague weird alien plot the whole time. It's like, holy moly, man, this stuff just keeps building and building and building. You never know where it's gonna go or end. It makes it a really fun watch. The pacing is so unlike anime. It's a mile a minute. It's great. And because all of this incredibly wacky and fun and action-packed stuff happens so fast and doesn't waste any time, you can actually have all of it and still have a ton of time for the characters. Despite all the stuff I just listed happening, the show is never not about Momo and Okarun. All that stuff I just said took place over the course of like 2.5 episodes. Momo and Okarun are still the heart and soul of this show, and it really speaks volumes about how likable the characters are when you can go through that entire completely bonkers set of episodes and then go back to relative normality and the show doesn't feel like it's got any less interesting. We go from all that craziness to an episode about how Momo wants to help out money-wise to rebuild the house, and it's not any less enjoyable. I was really thinking like, fuck, here we go again, when it turned out she was working at this super cutesy maid cafe and she was wearing this outfit. I was like, no, Momo show. We were doing so good getting away from this stuff. But to my delight, it doesn't do anything even remotely weird with it. It actually does a really good job in showing that this mundanity is more draining to Momo than any of the utterly ridiculous stuff she'd been getting up to in the preceding weeks. It gave me flashbacks to when I worked in a coffee shop, and it would feel like torture looking up at the clock every 5 minutes. Thankfully, I only had to wear a maid uniform that one time, and that was a really weird day. I let that situation really get away from me. Momo feels like she's opening up more and more, and she actively looks for affection from him sometime, and that's a lot of fun. There are moments where she openly worries about Okaroon like she did at the start of last season, but rather than dismiss her feelings and refute them, she hugs him. I think a lot of the characters in this show are colored by how other people view them. Momo is learning that her feelings are her feelings, despite who they're for, and they should be embraced. Screw everyone else. Ira seems to be learning that she prefers to be around these people that she can be her genuine self with. She's starting to gravitate towards these weirdos more and more because she doesn't have to put up an act around them. Quinta seems to feel great about himself in a vacuum and loves what he loves, but he feels clueless in social situations. He can't talk to girls and doesn't seem to have any friends, and I imagine he'll actually become a lot cooler because he's around these people. Gigi is the most comfortable in his own skin kind of guy you'll ever meet. He's the exact opposite of everyone else, and now he's saddled with the challenge of cohabitating his body with a murderous whack job spirit who is the exact opposite of him. And of course, Okaroon is learning that being yourself and loving what you love is admirable, but what's even more admirable is striving to be a better version of that self for the people around you. These people around him, the people he never had up until this point, are people to be cherished and people to work for and protect. And that makes for a really understandable and human motivation in the face of all this weirdness. All of these characters would not be the same characters if it weren't for the people around them, and I think that's a natural melding pot for really fun relationships and situations to blossom from. I wasn't sure about how to feel with how the season ended at first, but upon thinking about it, I think it was probably the strongest way they could have. And when you stop for a second, there hasn't really been any giant overarching story that has started. Yeah, finding Okaroon's balls is in the background, sure, but that goes ignored for multiple episodes at a time, and it's no big deal. There's no big bad guy to defeat or goal to achieve. There's nothing like that. Nothing urgent. What the show has mostly been about so far is running into new enemies and introducing new characters to the craziness of aliens and ghosts, and exploring character relationships through all these crazy scenes and moments. And that's been a lot of fun. So having the kaiju actually be this alien girl and jump scare kiss Okaroon in front of everyone might be the most hard-hitting end of the season you could actually cook up. The relationship between Okaroon and Momo has been the one ongoing story the whole time, and now you throw this enormous emotional curveball right at the end, and you have an emotional cliffhanger to end on rather than a story-based one, and I think that was actually really effective. I'll be honest, I can't imagine that situation resolving in any way other than Okaroon throwing himself backward and hurriedly explaining that it wasn't him to Momo, but still a great visual to end on. If this show keeps the energy it's built up and stays away from all that stuff I'm not a fan of, like it has been doing, I think this could continue to be a really great show moving forward. Anime has absolutely still been hit or miss for me since I started covering for the channel, but I gotta say, this might be my favorite one that I have covered. Patreon shoutouts, if you want to see a brand new video from me, you head to the YouTube release, you can support me on Patreon for just a few bucks. The link, as always, is in the description below the video. Biggest shoutouts of all go to my top patron, Blanco, who walked into a satanic church and burst into flames, which I think makes him the Antichrist. I'm not sure how it works. Liquor Cause I Know Her, who I saw survive a hanging by kicking their legs in the air so fast they were treading water, but in the air. Potato Scream, who survived lost in a forest as a child by forming the first ever pack of adult bears. They ruled over that pack with both love and fear. The Former Meaning of Life, who drank so much water out of the garden hose, their immune system has completely evolved, and they are now immune to all known pathogens. The 1AM Party, who looked into an actual functioning crystal ball, and their future was confirmed to be pirate skeleton. Not sure how they get to that point, but they seem pretty okay with it. And Whitrow, who I saw save a small dog from the grasp of an alligator by elbow dropping it out of a tree. And of course, my other fuck you money patrons, A Flock of Plain Cakes, A2AX Phoenix, Anthony Collins, Insomnite, Kevin Bartlin, Creffin, Midnight Balzoms, and Tater of Tots. And my god overanalyzers, Two Boots Are Beat, Ang, Andrew Watchert, Blade Dancer, Carlo Wren, Cosmic Newbie, Danny Stevens, Dr. Xerox, Dominic Saint, Dragon Beam 44, Emma Not Emma, Aaron Grace, Jackson, Jeremy Rubenstein, John Warhammer, Kirill Magnus, Mac, Marshall Rather, Matthew Lang, Michael Fellon, Mitchell Gobrecht, Nick, Nicholas Abbott, Oathkeeper 13, Peter Bayron, Philip Jindra, Rocket Mist, Ryan Maxwell, Scoobert, Shane Antonacci, Princess Useless Backwards, Super Snipper, That Blind Ginger, and some sort of bear face. I don't know. What is that thing anyway? Next up, I mean, how do you even follow an act like that?